Hi guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another Retro RPG. And at the end of another week's poll, we've got another clear winner, and this time it's the Babylon 5 Role-Playing Game 2nd Edition. So I'll review that on the desktop, and as usual, I'll be back at the end of the video with some channel-related stuff and things related to the poll. So I hope to see you there. So, this is the Babylon 5 2nd Edition rulebook. Now, before I go into the back cover, let's start off with the front cover. The major change, which is obvious here, is the OGL license. The first edition was a D20, so they paid Wizards of the Coast to use the D20 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons rules. But this uses the OGL, which is the free version of it, which means these are slightly stripped down rules. But that's allowed the creators of the game to experiment a lot more, and they've built up on some vital areas which really suit a Babylon 5 role-playing game. Space combat and telepath powers being the major areas which they've really enhanced upon. Secondly, I'm not that big a fan of the cover. You know, Babylon 5 did some amazingly good CGI images, and this isn't great. I'm not sure you can make it out on the camera, but you can see where this has just been automatically generated from a font by, like, Photoshop. I've done similar things before when I've been rapidly photoshopping things. You put the emboss feature on it, and it creates this kind of graininess on angles. And that's what they've done for the cover of a role-playing game. I would have loved to have seen a picture of the station, nice gas clouds, because never before in science fiction was space as colourful as it was in Babylon 5. I also find the subtitle here a bit odd, Faith Manages. Now, I'm sure it's from Babylon 5, but I can't really place it. You know, there was We Live for the One, We Die for the One, and various others from throughout the series. You know, The Coming of Shadows, and all of that. But this, I'm not sure where Faith Manages come from. Is it perhaps the final season when I was starting to lose a bit of interest? I can't place it at all off the top of my head. I should have probably had a Google before I started. Now let's have a look at the back cover. Babylon 5, the role-playing game, 2nd edition. The Babylon Project was our last best hope for peace. A self-contained world 5 miles long, located in neutral territory. A place of commerce and diplomacy for 250,000 humans and aliens. A shining beacon in space, all alone in the night. It was the dawn of the third age of mankind, the year the Great War came upon us all. This is the story of the last of the Babylon stations. The year is 2259. The name of the place is Babylon 5. So, the speech from the titles of the first season. Now, to go totally off topic, in Glasgow, some 25 miles away from where I live, this past week, there was the COP26 summit, where world leaders came, and all the headlines were talking about it being our last best hope for saving the environment. And all I could think of was this speech, but given from the 3rd season of Babylon 5. Babylon 5 was our last best hope for peace. It failed. And that's all I could think for COP26. But anyway, that's totally off the subject. Let's carry on. Prepare to immerse yourself in one of the most detailed science fiction settings ever created. Coming straight from the hit television series and films, the Babylon 5 space station has been the center of wars, trials, and revolutions that have shaped the entire galaxy. Now you can create your own epic sagas based on the legendary space station. This new 2nd edition of the Babylon 5 role-playing game is an expanded and comprehensive system for role-playing in the Babylon 5 universe. While utterly revamping and restyling key areas such as telepathy and space combat, this rulebook is still compatible with 1st edition supplements. Well, it's going to be, because it's still the D20 system. It's just with the serial numbers filed off version, which is the open game license. So let's have a start looking through, and let's look through it. Now we open up the cover and we get a lovely colourful map of the galaxy, or the colonised part of the galaxy, the popular bit, where all the cool kids go. Major systems and governments of 2259. That's very nice and very useful, and in a very useful place. And what else we got? Go in, we've got an introduction from Carl Sagan. Can't think of anybody else you would want to introduce things. We can see the 2nd edition's by Gareth Hanrahan and Ian Belcher. The 1st edition was obviously Matthew Sprang, who did some amazing work on it. But this is a very solid building on that. The credits, contents page, an introduction, what do we need? New to the Babylon 5 OGL system, the usual introductory things. That's a very heavy book, so I'm going to flick through it fairly quickly. Playing, welcome to it, sort of short history. Now, there are very nice pictures here from it, but they are a little sparse. And that's not a criticism, there's a lot of text in this game. You're getting a lot of game for your money, even though it was quite expensive. Expensive. Characters in the Babylon 5 universe. So, going through character creation. Now, I have to comment on this font. That is a horrible font. Why are the C's indifferent? I hate that font. But that's just a niggle, because I don't read it too easily as I carry on through the book. The rest of the fonts are lovely, but that one's just disgusting. One of the big points in it are influence, because this is kind of a political game. Babylon 5 was always about a political station, all the ambassadors and all that. So having political influence is a vital part of making the game similar to the series. Carry on through. We've got the ability scores, so the standard strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. Ability score loss, covering that, and then we've got the races. Now, I do like the way the races are done, except for humans, which is one of my problems with most role-playing games. Humans are treated as the standard species instead of being special in their own way. And that's a criticism I've had of many games, and this one included. We've got the Abai here. So we can see they get -2 strength, but +2 wisdom, so balanced out. They're medium size, base speed are standard. They're adept at many mental exercises. They may treat knowledge as class skills regardless of their character class. They may also attempt these skills untrained. They may remain underwater for a number of hours equal to their constitution bonus. +8 bonus to all athletics check for swimming. -2 to all initiative checks. Very good at defending themselves. +1 bonus to defense value. And so on and so forth. Basically, each species has advantages. Centauri here. What do they get? -2 wisdom, but +2 charisma, which kind of suits the Centauri. They're very impulsive, so not very wise, but they are a party-loving species. They like their drinks and parties, so +2 to charisma really suits. What else we got? The Drazi, the Minbari. The Minbari bonuses. I flipped over 2 pages there. +2 strength, -2 charisma, which kind of suits the way we've seen them. They're very aloof and standoffish, so they're not very charismatic. But when we see them, we see the monk Linnea. At one point, he offends or gets offended by one of the rangers, who's supposed to be an expert warrior, and he just lifts him off his feet by his throat in one swift move, showing off how powerful he really is. So that really suits. We've got different rules for the religious caste, warrior caste, and worker caste. I'm not quite sure the fact that they say the religious caste must choose diplomat, ranger, or telepath, but the warriors can only choose agent, officer, or soldier. I thought the rangers were supposed to be accepting of all types of Minbari, not just the religious, because we've got that with the worker caste as well. They can only choose scientist or worker as their starting class. They've got the favoured classes. We've got the Narns, the Pak Mara, and then we're on to classes. Given there's a lot more species in Babylon 5, that does seem a little empty. I would have liked to have seen more of the species in it, lots more options for players, but it's a nice starting amount. I guess they would have hand out more in follow-up volumes. Now we've got the classes. Now this is where it kind of varies from many of the D20 games, because let's start off with the agent here. And we have the class levels here, and it only goes up to 10th level. You can only stay in a class for 10 levels. So although your character can level up to 20, you have to switch classes at some point. Now, that was always a possibility in the D20 system, that you would have advanced classes that you could jump onto, changing from a warrior into a very particular type of warrior. But this is the first time I've seen that it really forces you to, because once you've been agent for 10 levels, you can't go any further, so you need to switch to being an agent something else. Now, you can switch to one of the basic ones, you become an ancient diplomat, or later on they've got the advanced classes, which will allow you to jump onto those. We've got the diplomats, we've got lurkers, we've got officers, rangers, scientists. Now, I find it a little odd that the rangers are in here for a start, because the rangers aren't seen at all, as far as I'm aware, in the first season. They crop up in the background, I think, of the second season and third season before they're really introduced during the third season. If I'm remembering correctly, perhaps they're introduced in the second season. I think it's the third, though. But they are in the background for quite a while, and as far as I know, in the first season they're not seen at all. So having them as a class in this seems a little odd. We've got soldiers, telepaths, traders, a lot of classes, workers. Nice selection. We've got from blue-collar workers, performing workers, white-collar workers. We've got the skills, which are standard fairly for the D20 system. You get your skill points based on what class you are as you go up, and then you allocate those points to the skills you have available. You've got class skills, which are allowed by your class. Any other skills are cross-class, so cost double the amount of points to go up, each 1 point, so 2 for 1. Allows you to create incredibly flexible characters. You know, if you want to be playing a warrior type who has thief skills in D20, you can go and buy those skills and sneak around and do all that kind of stuff, even if that's not usually allowed by your class. Very flexible, does try and push you into the roles of your class, but doesn't absolutely pigeonhole you, allows you some flexibility there. One of the reasons I love the 3rd edition D20 rules, and they are used very well here. So we've got acrobatics, athletics, bluff, just all the usual skills, a big list of them. Operations, notice, profession, piloting, technical skills, telepathy. And we've got synergy. Now, I can't remember if I've ever mentioned synergy before when I've been covering D20 rules. But synergy is when you are skilled at something, you get a bonus in something else. So, if you are skilled in acrobatics, having 8 or more ranks, you gain a +2 synergy bonus to any athletics checks. So if you're very acrobatic, you suddenly become slightly athletic. If you're good at bluffing, you gain a bonus to diplomacy and intrigue. If you've got diplomacy, you gain to linguistics. Intimidate also adds to your diplomacy. So even though the maximum skill you can get is limited by your level, you can get lots of bonuses and be really good at something, especially like diplomacy there, by having levels of bluff and intimidate up to 8, which then add +2 to your skill rolls for your diplomacy. Very, very good way of customizing a character, or even just giving you little free bonuses for being good at something. Really like synergy. I'm just raving about 3rd edition again, aren't I? Anyway, we go on to the feats, which are the special abilities. So we've got things like alertness, which gain you bonuses, but feats also allow you to do very specific things. So what we've got here, Elite Commander, 4 orders per turn when commanding space aircraft, +2 to knowledge tactics checks, easier to form a fleet. So they actually give you the ability to order better in space combat. Blood Oath, Elite Gropos, Endurance, just lots and lots of abilities to allow you to add extra abilities to your character as you go up levels. Feats, I feel, in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons have been watered down. At this point, I think they were really good for allowing you to take a fairly ordinary character class and make it different to everybody else who's just playing that character class. What else we got? Sixth Sense, Windsword, weapon proficiencies. And then we're on to the influence section, which explains how you get influence, and how you lose it, and how you use it. So, a very interesting political addition to Dungeons & Dragons. And then we've got the various factions, so you might have influence with Earth Alliance or Psycor. the Centauri, the Minbari, the Narn. Just going through the different groups who you might have influence for, and the DCs of making tests to succeed. So gaining access or tickets to an exclusive event with the League of Non-Aligned Worlds would be a DC 15 test. But you've got target numbers much here. So if you want access to Vorlon space, it would be a Vorlon influence resources of 40 DC. So very difficult to get. Onto the telepathy section. Now, these are limited by your P ratings, which give you access to certain abilities. So we've got Accidental Scan, which is P1 rating, Danger Sense P7 rating, Mind Shield of P1 rating. So Danger Sense can only be got when you've got a higher P rating. But the telepathic abilities themselves don't really seem to limit that at all. So we've got Biokinetics Action Block, Jamming, Reality Fabrication, just lots of basically magic spells, let's be honest. They require a DC test to succeed, but they're magic after a different name, to tell the truth. We're onto the equipment, so we've got various weapons. So we go from the basic axes right up to, I thought I saw the Minbari fighting pike there. Oh, that's a Minbari fighting knife. We've got exotic weapons, we've got various grenades, heavy weapons, from non-pulse rifles to grenade launchers. We've got slug weapons, rifles, lots and lots of guns, because it's a role-playing game, and let's be honest, it's going to come to combat at some point. We've got various types of armor, from chainmail up to pressure suits. Standard equipment, so we've got like gill implants, you can breathe different atmospheres. Standard stuff like handcuffs, various locks with difficulties to pick. Services, so you can buy an accounting service or you can get a driver. Gives you an idea how much it will cost per hour for you to hire those people. Different types of lifestyle, whether you're living right down in the abandoned areas of Babylon 5 or you're living in a massive palace like the Centauri Emperor, and how much it's going to cost you per month to maintain that lifestyle. Drugs. Obviously, Babylon 5 is a bit dirtier than most role-playing worlds, so drugs are an element in it. And then we're on to the combat section. Fairly standard 3rd edition rules. So we're talking about when you reach minus 10 hit points, you die, how to heal, temporary hit points, your actions in combat. All fairly standard stuff for the D20 system. It's laid out very nicely and does explain itself fairly well. Full round actions, full attacks, 2-weapon fighting, running in combat, miscellaneous actions, including attacks of opportunity. We're on to space combat. Now, space combat is really quite interesting, because not only does it cover sort of flying fighters and things, it handles up to massive fleet actions. If I flick through, so we've got standard battles and sort of crew experience, whether you've got civilian humans manning your ship or whether you've got rangers, shipboard roles for people, so letting you know which skills you can be involved, so the entire party can get involved in manning a ship, which is lovely. Many space-based games can do with that kind of thing. And the only game I've known to have handled it quite as well is the Star Trek role-playing game, one of the modern ones, which I think handles space combat really, really well by giving everybody in the party something to do. Attacking, arcs of fire, various standard things which go from fighters right up to massive battleships. But then we've got the order types. So you can issue orders to your ship or to the crew. So fire interceptors, extreme maneuvers, take a defensive position, target their cargo pods, target their bridge. Now, different orders you can hand out which will have various effects, and it's got the DCs for attempting them. And then we've got hold it together to make your ship resist damage. We've got launching fighters, open jump points to retreat, seize the initiative. Just many, many options for somebody commanding a fleet to hand out orders to individual ships and to their fleets. Additional solo craft orders. Common order combinations, so emergency retreat, prepare barrage. Then we're on to atmosphere and surface combat. A brief section on that. And then we're on to the spacecraft and vehicles. Now, unlike the classes and races, which didn't really have many pictures, this has lots of pictures of the ships, which, given Babylon 5 was one of the first CGI series, it does allow lots of beautiful looking pictures of the different ships. So we've got the Jaquan heavy cruiser here from the Narn with its lovely red and black hull. Hyperion heavy cruisers from the Earth Alliance, Nile heavy fighters from the Minbari, the Shadow cruisers, the Omega class heavy destroyers, Earth shuttles, space liners, Sharlin class war cruisers, just going through everything from the series, and there's a lot of options in here, and this really does cover the series very, very well. Craft special qualities. Then on to the Gamemastering section, where it talks about the series, how it would develop into a campaign. Does it fairly well explaining that. How to create epic campaigns. You know, starting at the end and writing backwards, sowing the seeds throughout of where the storyline is going to go. Having multiple story arcs, characterization, having one-shots within it. So not only do you have a massive long story, but you have individual things. Otherwise, you'll just get bogged down with your own continuity. Babylon 5 iconography, so keeping it looking like Babylon 5 in the player's minds. Canon versus player action. Campaign type, so offering you various options, whether they're starfarers just travelling around the galaxy, the Earth Force officers, whether they're Psi Corps, they're non-military, Centauri, whether interplanetary expeditions explaining or exploring the void, you know, finding the ruins of ancient civilizations and all that. And then mixed race ones. So, like Babylon 5 itself, where there were ambassadors, but there were military officers right next to them, creating a combination. And then we've got signs and portents. So, basically Babylon 5, where you would play the main characters through other stories. Other campaigns, it's got a few suggestions. And we've got future history. So, talking through the entire timeline, going from billions of years ago through the history of the Earth-Minbari War, going up to Mr. Morden coming aboard Babylon 5 in the first season, signs and portents, going right up to a million years after the series when Sol goes Nova. We've got character advancement here. You know, I'm talking about the various experience needed for levels, what they're going to get out of those experience awards, ability progressions as you get better, as you go up levels. And then we're on to the prestige classes. So you can go and become a fence, or a psychop, or a shadow agent. What else we got? A terrorist, a Phantom Mecha assassin, the true seeker, the xenoarchaeologist, a first one. Oh, no, we're off to that. I was going to say, how do you become a first one? Because that's an alien species. It's then going and talking about the first ones. The xenoarchaeologist, obviously, at X, would be the last of the advanced classes. Now, I have a problem with these advanced classes here, that they are very, very specialized. There aren't anything like advanced military officer, so you would be going from being a soldier to being a high-ranking soldier, going up through command. These are very bizarre ones and very, very pigeonholed. It's unlikely that you're going to go from being an ordinary worker to being a fence. It's very, very specialized. But it's nice that they're in there. I think it's far more likely in a Babylon 5 campaign that you're going to end up going between the original classes rather than going to the prestige classes. Anyway, it goes through the first one, so the older species. We've got the Vorlons and the Shadows. But it doesn't really mention the other species. I suppose they're barely seen. We've got trading, which can be a very important part if you're going to be the crew of a ship or whatever, just trading in space. The space travel sections and the speeds and jump gates and about hypergates. Different environments, so what happens if you're exposed to vacuum, whether there's explosive decompression. falling, fire, just the standard effects of things. We've got radiation, starvation and thirst, suffocation and drowning. Traps, very generic role-playing stuff here. We've got planetary travel for getting around planets, carrying capacities, and then we've got All Alone in the Night. So talking about Babylon 5 itself, we've got the listings of the command staff of Babylon 5 during the different seasons. We go through arriving on the station, command and control sections, how to use Babylon 5, diplomacy with the various ambassadors, the advisory council, how airlocks work, central computers, Babcom, Stellarcom for communicating around the station or communicating around the galaxy, law and order, ombudsman to solve disagreements between traders, moving around the station, the different sectors, and some very nice drawings of, or illustrations of the station and the different areas. Now, in the first edition, these were very dark in my opinion, but this is way nicer. It lays it out very, very well. We've got the Cobra bays, docking bays, the bar, the casino, continuing through green sector, brown sector, grey sector, yellow sector, and then we've got the characters, so Captain John Sheridan, Susan Ivanova, Michael Garibaldi, Stephen Franklin, Talia Winters, Ambassador Delenn, Ambassador Jacquard. So many of the actors dead now, and really makes me sad, especially as they're talking about making a new Babylon 5 series that you won't even get guest appearances from so many of these wonderful actors. Ambassador Kosh, Londo Malari, Lanier, Viacoto, regular visitors. So we've got Mr. Morden, Alfred Bester, Psychop. Then we've got some sample characters, our various types, Minbari priests, Brakiri traders, and the sky full of stars. So suggestions for how it's going to go. You know, what the Earth Alliance is getting up to, what Earth government is up to, the different colonies, taking the history forward, and what it's like to live in those places. So the ISN, how that communicates out information, identity cards for getting around and proving your identity. The Centauri Republic, so talking about them. Now, I've got a feeling this should have been somewhere else instead of crammed in the back. I would have probably preferred you to have all the information about the Minbari in with the Minbari species, so you didn't have to flick between pages to discover everything that your character might know about his history if you're not that familiar with Babylon 5. But let's be honest, this is extremely tailored to people who like the series. So we've got the Narns, we're onto the Vorlon Empire and the League of Non-Aligned Worlds, including the various species, so the Abai, the Brakiri, the Drazi, the Gaim, the Pakmara, and the Vree. We've got a pair full order list, so the various orders you can hand out when you're commanding a ship. Conversion notes from the first edition. Character sheet, which is very nicely laid out. It doesn't have a huge heavy background image, which really makes it more usable than some character sheets, although it does use that horrible, horrible font that I dislike so much. Carry on through the character sheet, then we're on to the index, and the OGL license at the back, which must be published in all OGL items. So that was the Babylon 5 role-playing game 2nd edition, and that won the poll with some 35% of the vote, so a very solid win. But coming very close on its heels was the Thri-Kreen of Athas book for 2nd edition Dungeons & Dragons, the Dark Sun setting, which had 30% of the vote, so a very solid showing for that game as well. But with Babylon 5 being knocked out as it succeeded, we need to replace that, and I've decided to include the Warhammer Companion book from 1990, which has a bunch of rules upgrades, ideas, adventure ideas for the Warhammer Fantasy Role-Playing Game 1st edition. Now, this isn't the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Companion, which came out in 2006 for one of the later editions. This is the original one from Flame Productions back in 1990. So we'll see how that does. Now, on other news, as I record this, I'm sitting about 8 subscribers short of the 2,000 target. So me and Adam will be doing our Scottish 2,000 subscriber special very, very soon. I've got most of the stuff sitting on my desk here. I just need to raid a couple more supermarkets to pick up a few things to bulk out the box, because there's only 9 things there at the moment, and I hope to include about 11 or 12, as most of the snack boxes tend to have normally. But apart from that, we're carrying on with retro RPGs. We've started the Path to a New Edition series, which will be going on for 11 episodes. And after that, I'll have a few rules breakdowns to cover games like the 2nd edition Babylon 5 and other games which win the poll. But apart from that, it's going to be very much business as usual on the channel. So thank you very, very much for watching as always. And as always, I'm saying as always a lot. Okay, but as always, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.